Hey, parents. We're back with Courtney and Markeisha, and we have a guest today. We have Melinda with Hey, Mommy. Hey.
Hey.
We were already chatting, so we've been cheating on you guys. But we did hit record finally. And so, Courtney, you want to say hey, real fast,
Yeah,
everyone?
hey, I'm so excited about this topic. I was actually already bragging about it on Instagram, just the fact we were recording it because I'm so excited for
You were
everybody
telling the
to hear
people
about it.
already?
Just like that we were recording, that there's something awesome was coming up and that to make sure they're following the podcast so they get the alerts. That was it.
All right, telling all the secrets already. Okay.
I'm terrible at keeping secrets. My
You
family knows that.
too.
I want to just give it to them right
Yes.
then.
Yeah. I hear that. Well, it
Melinda?
is sure to be a good conversation.
So tell us a little bit about your kiddos. First of all, that's what we love to hear about. And then you can
Yes.
tell us about yourself too.
Okay. Very good. So my name is Melinda. I've got two kiddos. Clark, who is 7, he's a second grader who just started school. So it's all, big into what grade you're in and where your teacher name and all that. And then my daughter is 4. She's in pre-K this year. Both of them have a culmination of disabilities. Autistic, anxiety, mood disorder, mobility. So it's a fun place to be at our house. We just, navigate different things day by day. And then I'm a woman who also has my own neurodiversities and neuromuscular condition as well. As then professionally speaking, I run Heymomme. It's a lifestyle platform for moms raising kiddos with disabilities. We are super big into empowering representation in motherhood and childhood platforms, and just how important it is to see yourself represented and utilizing brand platforms to showcase more to disability than just the medical mindset that tends to come when people hear a diagnosis.
Yes. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah,
They can't see me.
absolutely.
I love that. You started that last year. I think that's how, I know that's how we found
Exactly
each
a year
other.
ago, Labor
We found
Day.
each other on Instagram because I was like, this is wonderful. This is it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I clearly remember you were one of the first people who started following the platform when it launched, which was last Labor Day. I couldn't help but, the irony in a mom platform launching on Labor Day with everything.
Right.
But it was special because, at least in my motherhood journey, I was really struggling for many, many years, trying to find guidance and tips and advice. And, would have been great if I had known about podcasts and stuff from back there. But I was looking to parenting platforms, such as Parenthood Magazine, the Every Mom, those types of places for support. And I could not find any guidance on our situation, and it left me feeling even more isolated and alone. So as I started to do all my research and find the statistics behind representation and where the conversations are going, I was like, this is not being talked about. And oh my goodness, when 17% of kids have a disability, like, we need to be talking about this and supporting moms in any way. So that's where Heymomme came about.
And what I love is that there are a lot of support groups, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but there's a lot of support groups, and it's like really, really sad. And it's like a lot of the pictures are like sad.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not always sad. Like when I am with my son, it's funny stuff that happens. A lot of it is not just like, we're just not a sad family because of his diagnosis. It's a lot of hard work, and it's different than raising our other kids. But he does some stuff that is hilarious. There's a lot of joy in his neurodiversity, and I like that you're bringing that too. There's a lot of cute stuff that he does. Like today, he was getting dressed, and I was doing his hair, and he was like, "Ooh, he has teenage brothers, so he's his lingo that he repeats. He's like, "Ooh, I look Oh, I got that drip. That's what he said.
Okay.
I look like Aiden. That's a 16-year-old brother. So I just, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just sad kids that are, using their devices, and even if they're not speaking, it's not always sad. And that's a lot of the representation that
Mm-hmm.
was like in the past. And so a lot of your things that you're bringing up is like, they have the cute clothes and they're,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's, I know we experience a lot of challenges and struggles in life. And at the same time, that's not the only capacity to our experiences. But I think
right,
when the conversation and the representation is so heavily weighed that way, it makes us feel even more of this is the capacity of what, because that's what you see. It's sort of like what you see is what's possible in a sense. And so
right.
I think when we start sort of flipping the script when it comes to, okay, what are we talking about within our families and what are we showcasing, it gives people a lot of new perspectives of what is possible for their own lives. And, we just get creative over here because that's,
Right,
that's just how you get things done. So,
right, right.
Absolutely. I remember when so my daughter, Hannah, she's 18. I'm still getting used to saying that. She's 18. She's a wheelchair user and she's non-speaking. But when we started traveling and sharing our travels, many of my friends and in my circles were kind of almost like shocked that we travel with her, or we take her some of the places where they didn't really think she could go, or how nerve-wracking it is sometimes to travel when you have different medical things. But part of the reason why I wanted to do that is we love to travel. Travel brings us a lot of joy. It is a lot of work, but so is going on any vacation when you're taking your kids. So I call that a family vacation. And then when it's just Craig or I or myself, like that's a vacation because it's work no matter what when you're taking the kids. But part of the reason why I started sharing that is I wanted people to see, you can be a wheelchair user and take awesome trips, and your child can be non-speaking and they can enjoy these things. And I didn't see enough of that myself, but I think that would change Diagnosis Day so much when I think back to when I got Hannah's diagnosis, and like you said, feeling very alone, isolated. This is, early 2000s. It's just the internet is so different now. The capability of having all these different networks and information. But how different it felt when my son got his diagnosis was so drastically different, because I felt like, okay, it's putting a label on what I kind of already knew, but I had such a different picture of what his life could be because of seeing all these other kids growing up and having jobs and living really full lives. It changed my perspective of what his life could look like versus when I got the diagnosis for my daughter. It was very doom and gloom, negative. And it makes me sad when I think back, because I was so anxious about her being born with the disability. And I was so worried that it took away from the joy of I'm bringing my daughter into the world. And I just wish I could go back and be like, it's still joyful. Like, I'm having a beautiful daughter and she's a beautiful person. It's just different than what I thought motherhood would look like. I didn't see that. I was telling Markeisha last time we recorded, they missed that chapter in What to Expect. You're expecting. They missed my chapter.
We're not just in a letter to the author. Yeah.
So I like putting that out there. And like you're saying, changing that perspective is also giving families hope and seeing themselves represented in all these different places and on these platforms is going to change their mindset for what their kid can do and what kind of life they can have, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And as the parent too, we're like quarterbacking that, as the leader of our kids and our pack and everything. And so I think, when you empower moms in that way, or parents, to say, hey, like, yeah, I can go on this awesome vacation. Here's how to make it accessible, or here's how you do this. Like that's life-changing, because now you go from feeling sort of that confinement. I don't know. I always feel like I'm at a house. Even before the pandemic, I was like, we are just always in the house, and it feels so restrictive, and then you see someone with your disability or your child's disability, doing something at the beach or mountains or whatever it may be, right? I think it just opens up
Yes.
all of life again, right?
Yeah.
When you've been told that there's these restrictions or limitations that you should expect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's changing that too, because more people, I say pressure, but it's in a good way. Like, I feel like we should be further along than we are coming into, 2023 here. I feel like beaches should have a rollout mat so that Hannah can go down to the ocean. But what I see happening is as more and more people do it, they are feeling the pressure that why our beach doesn't have that. Our beach needs to have that. Let's get that. So I am excited about that happening more and people feeling that I don't care if it's pressure, like, yes, get it accessible. Like my daughter wants to go to the beach just like you wanted to go to the beach. You cannot roll a typical wheelchair and or honestly walk very well down there with a cane or any other assistive device on the sand. So having a beach accessible mat is like a minimum that you can do to say everybody's welcome here. So I think I saw something on your page that was like trending versus your values. Did I get that right?
Yeah. So like trends versus standards is how I've sort of been thinking about it. And when something's the standard, that's the minimum expectation. This is so embedded to who we are as a family, a person, a business, that absolutely we're pre-thinking about these things. We're not sort of picking up on that trend afterwards. And I think a lot of times, I know a lot of times, brands, businesses, what have you, aren't considering those things. But like you said, when you start to see it from other places and they have that, positive response, it almost is like that good peer pressure that is like, oh, why haven't we been thinking about this? But rather than follow, a trend of, trends wax and wane versus a standard is concrete. It's we're solidifying this, inclusion as our brand value in everything that we do. And you just think about how you're doing things differently, I think, when you come from that mindset.
I love that. That was like, I couldn't cheer loud enough. I was like, yes, because you don't want it to be a trend, a feel good moment. It should be an extended feel good moment. What would feel really good is, people understanding simple things like, putting carts back that aren't blocking access ways. It's setting that standard, like you said, in that mindset that how can we make a standard of inclusion and making sure everybody knows they're welcome here. And a perfect story of that, I'll have to find it for the show notes, Markeisha, but a brewery made a fully accessible bathroom. No law, no mandate made them do it. They were remodeling and they said, we've been hearing about universal changing tables. We're going to make this bathroom accessible. And everybody kept asking them why, like, why were you doing it? And they said, because we saw that this was a need and we wanted to make sure everybody knew they're welcome here at our restaurant, at our place. And then they shared their plans and they shared how it was not that much more than to just remodel it yet. And then they brought in a wheelchair and they test drove it and they said, these ADA requirements are pretty, pathetic. Like you can barely get in here. So they made it better than that. And that's why I say the ADA is like the minimum. It doesn't mean you can't make it actually better and where you can move around. And they did a pocket door and they thought about all these things and really knocked it out of the park. And I thought, that's what we need. That's what we need more of is that was their brand value of everybody's going to be welcome here at our restaurant. And we want them to know that. And they did that by making an accessible restroom, which was really awesome. But I was just kind of shocked. I don't know why I still get shocked, but like why people are like, why did you do that? Like, because there's a need that's been overlooked and we didn't want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of setting this new standard of inclusion, which I just loved.
That's phenomenal. And I'm excited for the day where those things are no longer a surprise or like, the oddity, right?
Right.
Truly are the standard with everything. That's what we're trying to push for. But I also think, having that brand value and being so intentional about the whole experience for anyone who's coming is the way to look at it. And also the space where people will stop being inclusive in a sense, where they're like, oh, we value inclusion. And so we're going to tell you about that. But they don't show it through all the avenues of their business. Their website's not accessible. Maybe it's their parking spots, what have you. And, if it's a physical structure versus an online company. But you don't need to just say it, right? You have to actually live that out through your brand experience, no matter where you're hosting that at.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that's
say
really good.
that. Oh, sorry.
No,
I'm
go ahead.
gonna say that I love this work. However, before I was a special education teacher, I loved kids. I had no clue,
Mhm.
right? So I am going to believe that there's people out there that would love this work also, that
Mhm.
just think like, I was like, oh, ADA, like I didn't park in a handicapped parking space because I knew, that someone needed that parking space. So there's something that I wouldn't have done. But I didn't think about the things that I think about now, because I started to think about it once I was in the classroom with my kids, I call my students my kids. Then I started going to the playgrounds, and I was like, Johnny he can't wood chips, ridiculous. He can't go to, but prior to that, when I have my own kids and prior to Josiah, so just, I have the three giants. They're only 2.5 years apart. Then I have Josiah, now they're 19, 16, 13, and 7. So I had the bunch. So they would go to the playground, wood chips, no problem, right? Got into special education, eyes were opened. And I know that there are a lot of families and adults and kids and just people that are out there that are like, what's the problem with wood chips? I don't understand. Until I got into special education. And then I had a Johnny in my classroom that had a wheelchair. And then my eyes were open when I would take my own kids that did not have a disability to the playground. And then I would start thinking about Johnny. How could Johnny go on this playground? Yes, it is ADA accessible because there was a ramp. Yeah, he could get down to there was this pirate ship that all the kids loved. My kids loved this one. And he could get down there because there was a ramp. But then there was wood chips. And he could not access the big pirate ship that all the kids. So I would be livid. I would be sitting everywhere I went after I started being a special education teacher. I would be like, and how could he? Yeah. And how could my student, access this? And I was just everything. Yeah. But I became a special education teacher. Everyone doesn't have that experience. Yeah. So how would you, Melinda, how does someone who doesn't have a child that has a disability, how does someone who doesn't have the experience of being around kids that have disabilities like that, that's what opened my eyes. I would say that if I'm wishing that I had that experience sooner. That was already in 2000 and when did I start teaching? 2009. I was a general education teacher since 2000. I could have been doing this work sooner, but how do we get out of, we're all shaking our heads. You guys can't see us because of the podcast, but we're in this space. But how do we reach? We need to reach.
Yes, you do. I totally am on your question. Yeah. I am so glad you're asking it.
Speak to it.
Yeah. So this is why setting the standard for inclusion across all industries is so paramount. Yeah. Because if you do not have the lens of being disabled or having a child with a disability, then you're not seeing that. However, when businesses start representing people with disabilities across all platforms, when that is the standard that we are all operating by, you will not be able to go to a space and not see somebody represented. And once you have that perspective, once you have that lens of somebody else, then it's like you said, I couldn't help but not see it every time I go to the park. When you have that lens of other people and their expression, I think it gives you that, you can't fault someone for not knowing yet. But once you know, once you experience, once you see somebody else in their life, that sticks with you through everything else. And the trickle down effect from that, I think, is where we see global change when it comes to the social impact of disability representation, right? It's that person who, let's just take Target because they're being active in this right now. At least when it comes to their children's lines, you're not seeing disability representation across, their women's and men's lines, which is a big thing that I think could improve. But, they're going and they're seeing representation of a girl with cerebral palsy, using her mobility aids. All of a sudden, that mom, those children are saying, oh, okay, she needs this extra support to walk. And then the questions start coming, right? Because we all know kids are the best at asking questions.
Right.
Well, how does she get up and down the stairs? How would she play here at the playground? What clothes would she wear? That allows her to have, maybe
Right.
not some best example YouTube's everything else. Like could you imagine seeing, I've yet to see, and I would love to see, kids, people with trachs, people with G-tubes, people with oxygen, there's such a diversity within disability that also needs to be represented. And when we have that, it starts bringing up those questions that gets all of society more creative in how we're operating and performing in the world. And that's going to transform just, everything, I feel like. But it starts with people have to see you have to have that visibility for it to start being a thought in people's minds.
I also think, sorry, I'm hogging up the conversation. What I found too is when I was in the classroom is that families weren't going out also. Mm-hmm. So what I always encourage, they're like, no, we don't go out to Cheesecake Factory because Emma has too many meltdowns. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? Like, you don't go to Cheesecake Factory? So what? She has meltdowns. Like, you guys want to go out to eat, right? And this is prior to having Josiah. Like, this is just my first year teacher mind. Like, if you want to go to Cheesecake Factory, go to Cheesecake Factory, right? So what if someone looks at you? I know we've all been to restaurants when there's kids, disability or not, is having a meltdown. Throwing the breadsticks, throwing the stuff, right? And they're like, no, because, and the reason wasn't that Emma was having a meltdown, was that everybody else was looking at them, right? Because they don't know if Emma is autistic or if she's just having a bad day, right? But the feeling is that everyone's looking at me and I'm ruining everyone else's time, right? So it's like having families feel like I belong in Cheesecake Factory or at the park, even if my kid is throwing the wood chips or rubbing the tree. Joe loves rubbing the
texture.
Tree. Yeah. So, I don't care. I'll be like, you guys can't see me living the look, but there's a look that my friend Jen says I have this look that's like, I wish you would say something to me about my son. He loves the trees. But everyone's not there yet. But I want you to be. I'm looking at you. I'm pointing at you, families that are listening, to be. You deserve, you pay your taxes to go to the park, even if to go to Cheesecake Factory, even if like we're just going to go in and we're going to go out. People need to see that there might be a meltdown and then we can go back, to your comfort level. If that's what you want your family to, if that's part of your family culture. We talk about that a lot. Courtney.
Yeah.
We travel. Courtney's family travels. We have other kids too. So that's another thing that we talk about, is that we don't we don't cater. I'm just gonna tell it how it is. This is our podcast. We don't cater to his disability. We have a family culture, and we do make accommodations for those things. So we're not like torturing him with things that he just doesn't like, but we do have a family culture, and we make accommodations for those things, but we do have a family culture of things. And one of those things is travel. So we make accommodations to those things, but we do still do things for our family culture because like our kids are big in sports, and we got to go to those sporting events. We worked up to where he can go to those things. And we make, when we know that it's too much, then we make, my sister's available. These past couple of times have been too much for him. He stays home with the siblings. So we make, like I said, accommodations, but we don't just cater to them. If we're going to go out to dinner, then we're going to go out to dinner. If there's going to be a meltdown, then we have a plan for that. But we do go out.
Yeah, so
we're not going to
avoiding that.
Out. Right. We're not going to hide ourselves. If that's something for your family, everybody doesn't like to go out to dinner, but say it's camping, or say it's the movies, or say whatever it is for your family culture, especially when you have other kids, I feel, especially when you have other kids, because that's a whole nother thing that we can talk about.
It's like easing into it though, but sometimes we feel like if we just stay in, then we won't, like you said, take away from people's time or cause a scene or whatever it might be. And Hannah hated grocery stores. I don't know what it was. If she wanted all the food, she loves food. I don't know if she just saw the food and felt taunted, but she hated grocery stores. And we had an awesome caregiver who took her to the grocery store every day that she worked with her. They went for 1 minute, 30 seconds. And one day she said, Courtney, we went down 2 aisles. No more screaming. And so it was uncomfortable. It wasn't like it was, perfect, but it was uncomfortable to go through that process, but it was necessary so that Hannah could enjoy, going to the grocery store with us. It couldn't be avoided. Now, now it can be avoided with all these order online, but you don't want to go through your life avoiding things because of your own disability or because of your child. You have to decide what you want and then find a way to go about and get it. But seeing people need to see more of them in real life, because I wonder why kids stare at her. I really do. And I've come to realize it's so new to them. They have not seen someone her age in a wheelchair navigating, making maybe different sounds that she makes, because Hannah really is completely, non-speaking. She has some sounds she makes that I know what they mean. Some tones I know means excited. This tone means she's mad. This one's like she's getting ready to do something, but nobody else knows what that. So it's different to them. So they turn and look because they don't know what that sound is, or why she moves her arms spontaneously. And so I try to have sympathy for that, but I also realize it's because they're not seeing students in school. They're not out a part of the school community. They're not out at the playground at the same time as them. And I know we can take the conversation in lots of different ways, but it comes back to your core mission of what you're doing there is saying kids need to see other kids, other adults represented so that they're not staring. They're like, oh, she's in a wheelchair because her legs might not be able to balance and her muscles might not be able to hold her up. Yeah. But it's a phenomenon because it's not ingrained in their community or out in their world. So that's why they're staring.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
I talked to a lot of moms about this, and it's sort of that, we're the billboard. When we go into a restaurant, a shopping place, you become the billboard, right? Because there's not representation elsewhere. You're that. And that's a lot to take on with someone who doesn't, you're not asking for that role. You don't want that role, but you do want to be able to freely go where you want to and not be stared at or looked at constantly, right, for those things. So I hope and I think that as representation increases, not only does that make it a more welcoming place for us to go visit, because we know we're included here, we see ourselves and such, but it also takes off some of that social pressure that we feel sort of in the here and now with everything too.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know
that's
it's hard.
such a good point.
I know it's hard, but I think about all the people who didn't want to be the billboards in civil rights and disability rights and the rights that we have currently, which was way harder, than what we have now, because we have way more technology. Look at what we're doing right now, like about to do a podcast and social media, and that they didn't want it, and it was harder. And I know, I'm just encouraging people to, like, if it's not us, then who, kind of thing. It's not easy to want that kind of attention, but if it's not on in a daily kind of life, who's going to be on those Target ads? Who's going to be, if they don't see it at the Cheesecake Factory and at your local, we're already so segregated at the school, schools, especially if someone's kid or family doesn't stand up at each kind of school and say, well, you know what, I'm going to lead this at my school, and it's going to be my kid, and we're going to go to the grocery store, and we're going to do this in my area, then how can we have that representation? Who's going to be on those ads? Who's going to be in the commercials? I know it's tough. I'm not saying it's easy, guys out there, but it's going to be who's going to be.
Yeah, I think that's been really encouraging to see in our mommy community as well. So on our platform, earlier this year, I put out, if you are interested in being the representation, literally being the change that people see by working with brands, let me know. And we had 50 families immediately sign up and say, you know what, this is a calling, or a desire that I have, that fits their personality, that wants to be showcased in that way. And so then my work has started to become, through a program designed by Inclusion, to connect those families with brands who want to facilitate that inclusion and truly, fit that standard for their industry, which is so awesome. And I think, to your question, there are families who are ready to rally in that way. And then there's other families who just want to send the email to the school, which is just as awesome, right? And equally as important. So I think it's really a culmination of, hey, to the families who are like, I want to show up for the photo shoot so people can see and your kid can feel included. And to the other families who are like, hey, Melinda, give me the template and I'll send it to my teacher right now. So we have a whole aisle of, inclusive children's books at our school. All of those forms of advocacy are really gonna.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up too. Yeah. There's different ways. So how can the listeners get on board? How can they help support this mission?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So we have everything linked up at our heymomme.com website. So if you go there, you'll see a space to, one, be nurtured and loved on with content that supports your everyday life, as well as, find the opportunities to join the Mommy Network and, rally with brands who are looking to further their inclusion too.
And where can they follow you at?
Yeah, so we're online at Heymomme. Mommy is spelled with an E, so it's Momme, which is a little fun twist. Or personally, I'm at Melinda K. Martin on Instagram as well.
Now, will you come back and just talk to us about your kiddos and your own personal journey? Can there be a part 2?
Absolutely. We can certainly dive into that. That'd be fun. All for it.
That sounds good. We're gonna. We promise to keep these as little sweet treats. We're because we know you guys are busy moms like us. So we're gonna wrap it up. And Courtney, you have anything to say to wrap this up before we'll come back for part 2 though?
Yeah, we're gonna come back for part 2. But did you also make a Mother's Day video?
We did. Yeah.
So I would say go check it out. It's still up on your platform, right? We go back. I loved seeing that. I loved seeing moms. So basically, it was like moms rocking it, doing what our everyday life might look like.
Yeah.
And it was even a chance for me to see, other moms rocking, getting the AFOs on, getting this in, doing that. So I loved seeing all the different moms in action. So that was like my Mother's Day treat, that I loved seeing myself in other moms. So I really hope they go and follow you and check it out, because
I will link that to the show notes, because that one was showing all different kinds of mommies doing what they do. Yes. I'll link that one in the show notes for you guys.
And we'll also link the brewery, because they had their the plans for the accessible bathroom, and you guys can go check out some of their other content they have. So it's not local. I haven't got to go to the brewery. It's not in my state, but I still think you can check out and follow their page and support them that way too. So we'll do that.
Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming. Yes.
Absolutely.
And we'll get a date together for part 2. Everybody have a good rest of your day or evening whenever you're taking a listen. And yeah, that's it. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.